let's take a look at the SEC East. Before we do that, if you want to get more NFL and college football previews, you can go to jimfice.com. You can get plays from the nation's top handicappers, including Geoff, who runs Las Vegas Sports Services. If you want to get free plays sent right to your cell phone each day, you can text GAME, G-A-M-E, to 25827. Also, if you want to check out some of the latest news and notes or even drop us a line, you can go to Facebook at Proline TV or Twitter at Jim Fice Sports. All right, let's move on to the SEC East. Start with the Florida Gators. Boy, they offer an incredible season under Jim McElwain in his very first year with very limited offensive talent, something that even he admitted when he took over the job last year, and yet they went 10-4 straight up, 8-6 against the spread, 7-1 in the SEC. Catch, though, is they started 10-1 with very limited offensive capabilities and then just folded up down the stretch, losing their last 3 games, 1-2 against the spread, including a 41-7 bowl loss. So this team still has some offensive liabilities here. The passing game the last 4 years have ranked 118, 114, 106, and 87th. And you have to wonder if it's going to get any better because they have junior quarterback Treon Harris back, but only 9 touchdowns and 6 interceptions, under 51% completions. And it's kind of a wide open mix. You got former Alabama and Oregon State quarterback Luke Del Rio. He's a sophomore. That's Jack Del Rio's son. He played well in the spring, but he's not alone. They got a Purdue transfer in Austin Appleby as a board and a Vanderbilt transfer in Josh Grady. So the quarterback situation really looks wide open, and it has to be because the production was so bad last year. And you've got a running back situation that's very much like the quarterback situation, is wide open. The guy to watch, though, is this junior college transfer, Mark Thompson. He was terrific at the junior colleges with over 1,200 yards rushing. And they also have returning sophomores, Jordan Cronkite and Jordan Scarlett. But the guy to watch is Thompson. The offensive line wasn't that good last year. In fact, they allowed 46 sacks. That was the 6th most in the country. Big reason was inexperience. It was a young line, so they probably will improve with all the experience coming back. And the wide receivers that they have, McElwain admitted last year we don't have speed or playmaking ability, and that's kind of the situation for this year, too. They do have Chris Thompson back and Brandon Powell. Powell had 390 yards, but it's really not a team that is wide open with some speed like we used to see with Florida just 5 or 10 years ago. Another guy to watch is Dre Massey, a junior college transfer. So there are quite a few junior college players who may step in and help. How did this team get to 10 wins with such a sluggish offense? Well, the defense was one of the best in the nation. 8th in points allowed, just 16.5 points per game. They were also 6th in the nation in yards allowed with 295 per game. And they look great again under defensive coordinator Geoff Collins. They got a linebacker in Jared Davis, who could have gone to the NFL, but he decided to come back for another year. It's a big plus. It's all kinds of talent up front at the linebackers. Alex Anzalone. The defensive line is even better with Brian Cox Jr. and Caleb Brantley. They got C.C. Jefferson as a sophomore defensive end, but he was a former 5-star recruit. And the secondary looks dynamite with Jalen Tabor and Quincy Wilson. So we know what we're going to get out of the Florida defense. They're going to be great. It's the offense that really has a lot of work to do. So you're going to see a team like last year struggling to score points, but the defense is going to keep them in any game. It is a surprise to me that they're on an 8-6 run over the total. I kind of see a lot of their games being in the 20-17 or 23-16 kind of range. Now the schedule, they got 5 away games for this season. Tennessee, Vanderbilt, Arkansas, and Florida State are the big ones, and those are some tough ones, so they're going to have to find a way to score some points on the road, and they're going to be 3-0 easily with their 3 easy games at home before they head to the big one September 24th in a showdown with rival Tennessee. So I see a team that's capable of winning 8 to 10 games again, but I don't see a lot of points, and I see a lot of games under the total, more than we saw a year ago. All right, a team that's also going to be vying for the SEC East, that is in rebuilding mode, is a Georgia Bulldog team that has really been loaded with talent the last couple of years, but seems to have underachieved in big games. They have a new coach here, Geoff. So what are the Bulldogs' prospects?
Yeah, it's every year they win 9 or 10 games, but with SEC, that's not good enough sometimes. So they have a new coach now, Kirby Smart, from former defensive coordinator from Alabama. The offense last year was 85th in the country in points per game, 104 in passing. They were 38th in rushing. This year, senior quarterbacks like Grayson Lambert, last year 12 TDs, 2 interceptions, almost nearly 2,000 yards. 63% completion rate. Plus Bryce Ramsey, 1 TD, 2 interceptions, 249 yards. And also freshman Jacob Eason, he was number 1 pocket passer in the nation, and he was rated that way. In the spring game, Grant Lambert was 11 of 22 for 140 yards. Ramsey was 16 of 25, 224 yards. And Eason was 19 of 29 for 244 yards. So they have some quarterback competition there, although Eason will probably be brought along slowly. The running back in the spring game, the redshirt freshman Tate Crowder scored 2 TDs. He was kind of like the star of the spring game. Nick Chubb is still recovering from an injury. We're not sure what's going to happen with him. And they still have junior Sonny Michel, averaging 5.3 yards per carry. Defense, they were 9th in the country in points, and 16.9 points per game. The nose tackle Trenton Thompson's back. He was a top recruit. Also, senior linebacker Jukes Amici was along with junior defensive end 6'6" Lorenzo Carter. He was also another 5-star recruit from 2014. 4 starters are back on the secondary from the secondary that was ranked number 1 in pass defense in the nation. So. Kirby Smart has a lot to work with here, and they could win another 9 games this year, maybe even 10. The schedule is they're at Missouri. Other road games are at Mississippi, South Carolina, Kentucky. At home, they got Tennessee, Florida, Auburn, and Georgia Tech. So some of their toughest games are on the road. But I would say Georgia would be. I'll go 9-4 with Georgia, John.
All right, they have been a very good road team over the last decade, mostly under Mark Richt. 54-23 straight up, 40-36. Against the spread. I will take a look at the South Carolina Gamecocks, and there's really not a lot of good news to talk about the Gamecocks. 3-9 last year, 1-7 in the SEC. They had no offense, so they bring in Will Muskamp, a defensive guy. Don't quite understand that. At home, how bad was it? At home, they were 2-4 record. The Gamecocks, they were a 22.5-point favorite to Citadel. Lost the game straight up, 23-22. Start with the offense. Boy, were they terrible. 110th in the nation in scoring. 207.5 yards passing per game, ranked 84th, and the rushing game was even worse at 88th. So they bring in some new offensive coordinators, basically from the Georgia Bulldogs in Brian McClendon, and Kurt Roper comes aboard. He was the offensive coordinator for the 2014 Cleveland Browns. I don't know about you, Geoff, but if anybody was with the Browns, I would bring in that to my coaching staff.
I agree with that one.
And these guys have a lot of work to do because the quarterback situation kind of up in the air. Connor Mitch is a junior. He's back, but only 165 yards passing last year. The senior quarterback, Perry Orth, is here. He had almost 2,000 yards, 12 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. Not impressive, under 55% completions. The offensive line doesn't give them any help as they only have 2 starters back. Not a lot of proven talent at wide receivers. The one guy at the running back position who may help is Lorenzo Nunez. 6.4 yards per carry to go along with 376 yards. He was second on the team in rushing, so he's the one guy that they can build around. But they mentioned wide receiver, not a lot of speed, not a lot of talent. Debo Samuel had 161 yards last year. He's a sophomore wide receiver. They have Brian Edwards, who's very fast, but he's a freshman, so there's a big question mark. Don't know much about him. Matrick Belton is back, a 6'4 senior, but only 121 yards last year. So there's a lot of big question marks. The new coaching staff took Jamari Smith and moved him from running back to receiver. That shows all the kind of flux that's going on. So all in all, it doesn't look like a very good South Carolina offense again, which is no surprise that they were a good team to look at under the total. And the defense doesn't look that good either. It was 72nd in the country in points allowed, 27.5 points per game. But the yards were much worse, 430 yards per game, 97th in the nation. So they bring in a new coordinator in Travaris Robinson. He has said in the spring he wants this team to be much more of a physical defense. So look for that early on if this team likes to come at opponents and hit them. They do have some good pieces on the defensive line, though. Darius English is a 6'5 senior. He had 4.5 sacks. And Marcavius Lewis had a lot of hype coming into the program and is kind of underachieved, but he does have talent. And the cornerback position, too, has a lot of experience with Chris Lamons and Rico McWilliams. The one concern, though, is Muskamp is a guy who likes to play press coverage with his cornerbacks, and these guys don't have a lot of experience in doing that, so there's going to be quite a bit of adjustments going on. All right, so does the schedule help them out? Well, they're going to open against Vanderbilt and then Mississippi State. Some early SEC games that are going to test them. Then they're at Kentucky in week 4, so there are some winnable games early on. Then you got the big game November 12th is at Florida. That's where Muschamp used to coach, and they end the season at Clemson, so the schedule doesn't do them a heck of a lot of favors. I'm going to say South Carolina needs to go to 500 to be a successful season, which would mean they'd be on the cusp of a bowl. If I had to wager, I'd say they're under 500 this year, as there are a lot of rebuilding to do with limited talent. And not surprising if you play totals, 7-3-1 under the total with that terrible offense that may continue. All right, speaking of teams going under the total, what are the chances of Vanderbilt having a winning season, Geoff?
Not much. They're still getting, they had that one good run there when James Franklin was coach, and before and after that it's been pretty much the same it's been the last 30-some years of Vandy. Last year they were 10-1-1 under the total, so that's one betting angle. They're 4-8 straight out, 6-6 against the spread. This year they returned 8 on offense, 8 on defense. They're on a 17-7 run under the total going back a couple seasons. On offense, they were 124th in the country last year. I think that's about last. 112th in passing, 88th in rushing. 3 starters returned the offensive line, and offensive tackle Andrew Jaux, who missed last season, he'll be back. 6'4" sophomore quarterback Kyle Shermer, last year 5 TDs, 3 interceptions, 503 yards, 42.7% completion percentage. In the spring game, he was 7-9 for 96 yards. Also, junior running back Ralph Webb is back. He had 4.6 yards per carry last year. He was the main part of the offense. Top receivers are back in Trent Sherfield and Caleb Scott. The defense was a bright spot last year, 22nd in the country, 21 points per game they allowed. Up front, they have juniors. You have nose tackle Nefe Lilalo, Jay Woods, Adam Butler are back. Linebackers, they lose some there, and then they also have defensive end Zach Cunningham. So defense, they should be okay. The secondary is intact, and they also have a 4-star recruit there, Jawan Williams at safety. Schedule, they open with 2 straight home games, South Carolina, Middle Tennessee. The road games are at Georgia Tech, West Kentucky, Georgia, Auburn, at Missouri. Home games against Florida, Ole Miss, Tennessee. I think I don't see much in this game. They might win 5 games this year, but watch this team. If you want to bet on this team, I think the under might still be the way to go to, because they're still on that 17-7 under run, and that should continue, John.
They averaged 15 points per game on off. Did they even try to score when they had the football?
I mean, they just it wasn't pretty.
Well, one team that has no trouble scoring points is Tennessee Volunteers under Bush Jones. They were supposed to have a really good season last year with a lot of experience returning, and they did. This guy can coach, and there's a lot of talent back on both sides of the ball. When he first got there, he went with a lot of freshmen, took his lumps, particularly on defense, but boy, has that been paying dividends last year and should again this year. They're off a 9-4 straight-up season, 8-5 against the spread, winning season in the SEC, and they capped it off with a bowl win over what was a great Northwestern defense. They clocked them 45-6, so expectations are high with 10 starters back on offense, 8 on defense. The offense was outstanding, 29th in the nation in scoring, 35.2 points per game. Had very good balance with almost 200 yards passing, and the ground game was 20th in the nation, 223.7 yards rushing per game. They got senior quarterback Joshua Dobbs back, 15 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, so he didn't turn it over, almost 60% completions, and he's a very good runner as well, 671 yards rushing, 4.6 yards per carry. They got Jalen Hurd back. He is a 6'3 junior running back who is just a dynamic player. Almost 1,300 yards rushing, 4.7 yards per carry. Throw in 4 offensive line starters back, including All-American tackle Chance Hall. And this is going to be a very potent, imbalanced offense once again that you really don't want to play. The wide receiver core has got plenty of speed too, even though they're kind of a run-first offense. They're loaded. Junior Josh Malone is 6'3", he had 405 yards. Josh Smith is another junior who knows the system. They got a speedy slot receiver in Vincent Perry. And they've got a 6'5 guy in Jason Kroom, who's actually switching from wide receiver to tight end this year. And then Jeff George is a new addition, a wide receiver via the junior college ranks. So Bush Jones has an offense that's positively loaded this year. They're going to be tough to defend. And the defense for the Commodores was outstanding last year, 21.2 points per game. They're ranked 25th in the nation. They were 57th in yards allowed. They do have a new defensive coordinator in Bob Shoop. This guy comes with a very good resume, though, from Vanderbilt and Penn State. And he's been highly touted. He is going to keep the same 4-3 defense that they have been used to. And he's got a lot of talent returning, too. Derek Barnett is a 6'3 junior defensive end leading a very strong defensive line. The secondary is outstanding, led by Cameron Sutton. He is a 3-year starter, and strong safety is junior Todd Kelly. So there's no weaknesses at all with this offense. And the schedule, that's where you want to look at this Tennessee team early in the season, because it is tough early. Week 2, they're going to be hosting Virginia Tech, although that game is in Bristol, Tennessee. And then week 4, they're going to be hosting Florida. And week 5 at Georgia, week 6 at Texas A&M, and then they get Bama in week 7. Really difficult schedule for the Vols. That game against Bama, they lost to Bama a year ago, 19-14 as a 14.5-point underdog. So they give Bama quite a run. So a very interesting season here for the Vols, and it looks very good. Keep in mind, they do like to run more of a hurry-up, up-tempo attack, despite some of the reliance on running game of late. And Tennessee's on a 29-19-2 run over the total. I see this team, though, 8-9, maybe even 10 wins. The talent is there, but the schedule may get in their way with some losses. But very talented team. All right, the Missouri Tigers, they went to 2 straight SEC title games, Geoff, and then bottomed out at 5-7 last year. So what are we looking at here? Bounce back, or is their run done?
Well, we found a team that's had an even worse offense than Vandy. This team was
That's not possible.
127th in the country last year, 13.6 points per game, and boy, they really had problems at quarterback. It was toward the end of the season, it was pretty hard to watch. Tigers were 5-7 straight out, 3-9 against the spread, 11-1 under the total, and a lot of those totals weren't even high posted totals. That tells you what kind of offense it was last year. They have a new offensive coordinator, Josh Heupel. Can't hurt. He was at Utah State last season. That team averaged 29 points per game. The sophomore quarterback Drew Lock last year, his stats: 4 TDs, 8 interceptions, 49% completion rate. He pretty much was forced in. They had nobody else. But this year, I think Marvin Zanders is another quarterback candidate. He was 8-13 in the spring game, 83 yards, 1 TD. Locke was 9-13 in the spring scrimmage, 134 yards, 2 TDs. Junior running back Ish Witter is back. He averaged 4.1 yards per carry. 3 offensive linemen are back. The receivers are Jamon Moore, Nate Brown, and Sean Colkin. They didn't look too good last year, but then again, they didn't have much to deal with there with the quarterback situation, so it's hard to really judge them at this point. The defense was good. It's 6th in the nation, 16.2 points per game. Linebacker is strong this year. They have veteran middle linebacker Michael Shearer is back, and also strong side linebacker Donovan Newsome returning. Secondary solid with Thomas Wilson anchoring that. So once again, the defense would be the strong point in this team. The offense is going to be a big question mark, especially at quarterback. They have the schedule: they at West Virginia, at LSU and Florida. Also road games at South Carolina, Tennessee. At home, they get Georgia. And it's going to be a tough year for Missouri. I think it's Gary Pinkel is a tough act to follow too. So the pressure's going to be on Barry Odom. There's a new coach here. He's a new last year's defensive coordinator. I'll go with Missouri winning. Last year they were 5-7. I'll go with 5-7. Or well, they play 13. I'll go with 5-8 this year, John.
All right. So we just talked about 2 of the worst offensive teams in the country, Missouri and Vandy.
Yeah.
They did play each other last year. The betting line was only 1.5. The total was 34. And what was the final score? Do you remember?
What was it?
10-3. Battle field goals. Probably one defensive touchdown.
Yeah, Missouri was not an exciting team to watch last year. They won that one game after they had that controversy on campus, but I think that was just all on emotion. But other than that, that was about it. So.
Yeah, we're looking at some bad offenses in this division. I'll sum it up with the Kentucky Wildcats here. Mark Stoops, he begins his 4th year as coach. They've been improving under him, but they still don't have a winning record. Back-to-back 5-7 years. They were 3-9 against the spread last year. Expectations were actually higher, and they were 2-6 in the SEC. They're on a 14-10 run over the total. He got 6 starters back on offense, 8 on defense. And he brought in some new offensive coordinators to get some new looks here. They averaged only 24.7 points per game. That was 95th in the country. Really didn't have a good passing game, 209 yards, and the running game was 79th in the nation. So he turned to the University of Cincinnati, which ran wide open spread attacking offenses. He brings in Eddie Gran, who was the offensive coordinator for the Bearcats, and he also brings in Darren Hinshaw, who was also with Cincinnati. That was a program that averaged 540 yards per game. So you should see a new look with what the Kentucky Wildcats are trying to do on offense. Clearly want to go more up-tempo. Good news is at quarterback, you have Drew Barker. He had 364 yards last year, and they bring in a junior college transfer in Steven Johnson. So you got a competition between these 2 guys. They do have a very good running back to work with in Stanley Williams. This guy's a 5'9 junior, had 855 yards rushing last year, 7.1 yards per carry. So he's a talent to build around, along with 4 offensive linemen coming back, although the one guy they did lose was their best player. Also, this is a very big offensive line for Kentucky, so they want to spread the field and run, but the offensive line is big. They might have a better running game than passing game. And the good news at wide receiver, everybody's back. Junior Garrett Johnson at 694 yards, 15 yards per carry. 6'3 junior wide receiver Dorian Baker is back, so their top 3 pass catchers are back. And so they have a lot of options here as long as they can get this quarterback situation settled. Defense kind of took a step back. They were 70th in the nation in points allowed, 27.4 points. So again, that's not going to cut it in the SEC. And they lost their top 7 tacklers, and they couldn't stop the run, which was really bad. 196 yards rushing allowed per game. That was 98th in the nation. That's really, you have to be able to stop the run first, or you're really dead. And the good news is they have one guy, Matt Elam, back, who could be one of the SEC's best nose tackles. But beyond that, they're really thin at linebacker. They lost some of their top players. So the position is wide open coming in to this year. If you're looking for some JC transfers to help out, not JC, but coming from other schools, Courtney Love comes over from Nebraska, and Derniero Naster comes over from the Big Ten in Minnesota. They've got a chance, because they've lost so much of the linebacker core, to step in right away. But still a lot of question marks on this defense, a lot of question marks when it comes to stopping the run, which is going to be key against some of these great SEC run defenses. They also lost one of their best players in the secondary too. So the schedule for Kentucky, very difficult road schedule. Week 2 at Florida, week 5 at Alabama. Very difficult start. They also got road games at Missouri, Tennessee, Louisville, and they have to play at home against Mississippi State and Georgia. So all in all, a lot of question marks on both sides of the ball, particularly at the quarterback. So I cannot see a winning season once again for Mark Stoops' program. All right, let's make our predictions now on who's going to win the SEC. Geoff, who do you see
I'll take Alabama over Tennessee.
in the title game?
Yeah.
Betting line would be, well, it wouldn't be that high, would it? 8 or 9?
Yeah, I'd say 7.5.
7, okay. I will go with LSU against the Georgia Bulldogs. A lot of talent on both sides of the ball for that one. All right, that'll do it for the 2016 SEC version of ProLine. Make sure you go to jimfeist.com for more NFL and college football previews. You can also check out Jim's YouTube page. It's called Sports Betting, where you'll see his free plays daily. And if you want to send us a note, go to Facebook at ProLine TV or Twitter at jimfeist.com. All right, that'll do it from here from Las Vegas. Good luck with the games, everyone, and we'll see you next week.